Hello and welcome to Beyond Business, the program where we track the latest trends in the global economy. Today we're looking at how France is trying to spur growth among small and medium-sized businesses and create the corporate success stories of tomorrow. In 2008, at the height of the financial crisis, France set up the Strategic Investment Fund, or the FSI. The brainchild of President Nicolas Sarkozy, the general idea of the fund is to find those diamonds in the rough and help them grow by pumping in money. And today, the FSI manages billions of euros worth of investment. In a moment, we'll speak to the director of the FSI, Gilles Michel, who's our guest in the studio. First, though, let's take a closer look at two different examples of how the fund makes its picks.
The southern French city of Toulouse is home to Mechamidi, which manufactures hydropower plants. Since 2009, the company's also been one of the beneficiaries of what's known as the Strategic Investment Fund, or FSI. But what is it about this company that makes it a prime candidate for access to the funds? Mechamidi's chief executive believes it's his company's involvement in the renewable energy sector.
What you have to understand is that 90% of the world's green energy comes from hydroelectric power. It may not be the most talked about source of renewable energy, but it does dominate the sector, so that in itself is strategic.
President Nicolas Sarkozy has made no secret of his desire to develop the green energy sector in France. Mechamidi's CEO says the company has a competitive edge because it's not just focused on the domestic market.
We're also strategic in that we're looking at more exports, meaning the biggest growth sectors.
And that includes the emerging markets, where France very much wants a slice of the pie. An understandable investment perhaps for the state, but what other kinds of companies are getting support from the FSI? Among the scattered villages and lavender fields of France's Drôme region, essential oil maker Bontou is reaping the benefits of the fund's involvement in its business. At first glance, the link between herbal oils and strategic investments is less than obvious, except that Bontou is one of a very small number of French businesses doing what it does.
Well, you need to remember that while there were maybe 40 companies competing in this market in the past, that's now down to maybe just a dozen or so.
Which begs the question, is the FSI there to promote industry or to protect traditional skills? Bontou's strategic dimension is perhaps harder to identify than Mechamidi's. But its chief executive says he's got high hopes for the company's future and can promise good results.
Essential oils are a growth area, and we need capital to help us move into new markets while still developing existing production areas. We needed funding to give us a momentum that will prove crucial if we're to achieve our aim of doubling our profits within 5 years.
Bontou says with those kinds of ambitions, the Strategic Investment Fund was a better place to turn to than the banks, which have become increasingly reluctant to lend.
In the 80s and 90s and over the last decade, there was capital available to us from banks. But the financial crisis put an end to all of that. There were no more loans available to us. So we chose the FSI as our new partner, one which was ready to take an entrepreneurial risk with us, help move us on to the next level, and develop the company as we had done in the past.
But does that mean the FSI is now taking on the role of a bank? As the lines blur, the question is, does the FSI itself know which role it wants to take on?
All right, let's put that question now to Gilles Michel here in the studio. Thanks very much, first of all, for speaking to us today. Let me first ask you then, what is your strategy? Is the FSI an investment fund, a traditional investment fund? Is it a venture capitalist or is it a bank?
Well, clearly it's an investment fund. It's a specific one which has a mission. Its mission is to select those companies which stand to be strong performers in their sectors, and by doing this, to promote basically the performance and the competitiveness of the French economy. And it is also a specific type of investor, as we only invest in equity, no debt, on a minority basis. Therefore, we never take control, and on a long-term basis. And that's very important and makes it very attractive, of course, to companies.
How representative are the two companies that we've just seen here in the report for how you make your investments?
They are very representative. They stand to, when I talk about investing in companies which are performing companies, which tend to be strong performers, if I may say so, that translate into either innovation and technology or exports or market share and leadership in their sector or employment. And those two companies qualify for several of those elements.
What's the sense, though, in investing in herbal oils? Is that really a strategic investment for France?
The point about strategic is that it's the investment fund which is strategic. The strategic idea, basically, is to channel significant amount of public resources to this single and very important goal, which is to invest in those companies which will enhance the economy's competitiveness. That's the strategic intent. And that translates into into investment into companies which do not have to be per se strategic, which is a term which is fairly loose, by the way.
Now, taxpayer money goes towards funding your investments. Do you think that taxpayers will have a return on that investment?
Absolutely, yes. Of course, we're an investor, and the first requirement for investor is to return the money to its investors with a profit. And more generally, being a taxpayer's money, we really face the strong need to demonstrate, and that's what we do through our investments, that although this is taxpayers' money, it is invested under market conditions. We do, and that has two consequences. Number one, we do expect returns which are in line with what the market would expect to return on an investment without debt. And on the other hand, we are investing as much as we can jointly with private investors and under identical investment conditions. Therefore, we are very careful at neither distorting the market nor ejecting private sector into the market.
Now, that leads me to another point. I mean, a lot of critics would probably say that you are distorting competition by investing in companies as opposed to letting them grow organically. What do you say about that criticism?
All companies need investors, in fact, and there are no companies which grow just out of intellectual design. So they do need bankers, they do need investors. We are one of the possible investors, and we are positioning ourselves on this very specific type of investor, which is, once again, long-term, which is minority, and which is equity only, no debt associated. That makes the investment proposal that we have a specific one, and I might add a fairly attractive one. The principal aim and target company that we have in mind are typically the mid-size companies which have potential and which need to enlarge their investor basis and have a strong interest in having investors which have an industrial angle, an eye in their investment, and which have time, to wait until value is being created. That's what we do.
But foreign critics would probably say this is just another example of how the French state is basically meddling into private business, into the private sphere.
I hear this critic. I'm going to say that on the one hand, the French financial sector is organized in such a way that there is a permanent deficit of investors' offer, because we do not have the pension funds which are a key driver of investment offer in many countries. On the other hand, it is not illegitimate for public money to be invested in companies as long as it is invested under market conditions. This is a very key point, and we pay a lot of attention in each and every of our investment into demonstrating that the investment conditions are those of the market. this, once we've accomplished this, then, it is absolutely a legitimate decision for the French, public authorities to decide whether they want to invest their money into current expenses or into investment. There's nothing wrong with that.
Now, what's the difference as well between the FSI and other sovereign wealth funds around the world? For instance, the sovereign wealth funds of Abu Dhabi or Singapore?
Most sovereign funds basically are reinvesting surpluses of trade balance, for instance, which we are not. They are managing and investing this money in a fairly strict portfolio management approach, which is not the industrial investors type of approach that we have. And they are usually investing their money outside of their own economy, whereas we only invest our money on the domestic market.
All right. Thanks very much, Gilles Michel from the FSI, for speaking to us today here at France 24.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Beyond Business. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay with us here at France 24. There's more news coming your way. Don't go away.